Officer, I'm a United States Customs and Border Protection Officer. I'm off duty. My credentials are in my left breast pocket. May I reach
Shut up!
slowly?
Don't move! You think that fake uniform fools anybody? You match the description.
Special Agent Eric Thompson had no idea who he had just stopped and detained at gunpoint in the middle of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. In the hours ahead, one ICE badge would be permanently removed, the agent would face federal charges for excessive use of force, he would be ordered to pay substantial personal compensation to the man he wronged, and the real victim would emerge as a decorated U.S. Customs officer whose only crime was being black while wearing a pilot uniform on his well-earned vacation. The federal government would later settle a civil claim for $2.8 million. 3 agents would receive disciplinary actions, including suspension, and the innocent man would receive a well-deserved promotion for his years of exemplary service. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever been treated unfairly by someone in power simply because of how you looked? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I read every single one. And if stories like this matter to you, stories that demand real accountability, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Xavier Walker was the kind of man who made the world feel a little safer just by walking into a room. Born March 12, 1981, in Chicago, Illinois, on the South Side, Xavier grew up in a small 2-bedroom apartment where his father worked 12-hour shifts as a city bus driver and his mother taught 3rd grade at a local elementary school. From the time he was 6 years old, neighbors remembered little Xavier carrying groceries up 3 flights of stairs for Mrs. Washington next door, refusing payment, saying only, "It's what we do, ma'am." In middle school, he tutored kids who were falling behind in math, stayed after class to help the janitor stack chairs, and once gave his only winter coat to a classmate whose family couldn't afford one. Teachers wrote the same phrase on every report card. Xavier has a gift for making others feel seen and valued. By high school at Simon Career Academy, he stood 6 feet 2 inches tall, athletic build, short, cropped black hair always neat, a neatly trimmed beard that framed a warm, genuine smile, and deep brown eyes that seemed to listen before he even spoke. He was starting point guard on the varsity basketball team, but he never trash-talked opponents. Instead, he helped opposing players up after hard falls and shook their hands first after the final buzzer. Scouts noticed his talent, yet Xavier's real dream was bigger than the court. At 17, he saved every paycheck from his part-time job at a local airport gift shop and took flying lessons on weekends. By 22, he had earned his private pilot license and logged his first solo cross-country flight. Aviation wasn't just a hobby, it was his way of showing young black kids in his neighborhood that the sky had no limits. After graduating with honors in 1999, Xavier attended the University of Illinois at Chicago on a partial scholarship, majoring in criminal justice with a minor in aviation management. He worked nights loading cargo at O'Hare to pay tuition, never missing a class. In 2003, he graduated magna cum laude and immediately joined U.S. Customs and Border Protection as a rookie officer at O'Hare International Airport. His supervisors quickly noticed the same qualities that had defined him since childhood: calm under pressure, meticulous attention to detail, and an unshakable belief that the law must be applied with both strength and humanity. Over the next 16 years, Xavier built a record that spoke for itself. In 2007, he was part of a team that intercepted a container shipment containing 480 pounds of pure cocaine hidden inside furniture frames. Street value over $12 million. In 2011, he personally identified forged travel documents that stopped a major document fraud ring operating out of 3 continents. In 2015, during a brutal Chicago winter, he organized an off-duty coat and blanket drive for newly arrived legal immigrants, spending his own money and coordinating with local churches so no family spent the night cold. Colleagues still talk about the time in 2017 when he stayed on duty for 19 straight hours during a major blizzard to make sure every traveler received clear, respectful instructions instead of being rushed through security. Xavier married his college sweetheart Elena in 2008. Together they raised 2 children, son Tyler, 15, and daughter Mia, 12, in a modest home in Atlanta after a transfer in 2015. Every Saturday morning, Xavier cooked pancakes shaped like airplanes for the kids. He coached Tyler's soccer team, never missing a game even after double shifts. He helped Mia build a model airport for her science fair that won first place at the state level. Neighbors called him the guy who mows your lawn when you're sick and never waits for thanks. At church, he taught Sunday school, mentoring at-risk teens and telling them, the system isn't perfect, but good people inside it can make it better, one fair interaction at a time. Xavier's kindness wasn't weakness, it was strength. In 2018, he volunteered for a 6-month detail at the southern border, training new officers on cultural competency. He insisted that every trainee learn at least 10 basic phrases in Spanish and understand that a uniform does not give anyone the right to forget another person's dignity. His annual performance reviews contained the same line year after year. Officer Walker exemplifies the highest standards of professionalism and compassion. But June 2019, he had accumulated 16 commendations, 0 sustained complaints, and the quiet respect of everyone who had ever worked with him. He had planned the New York trip for months. The Metropolitan Museum was hosting a special aviation history exhibit, and Xavier wanted to see the vintage cockpit displays while wearing his commercial airline style pilot uniform. The crisp white shirt with 4 gold stripes on the epaulets, dark trousers, polished wings pinned above his left pocket. It was his way of honoring the hobby that had kept him grounded through every tough case. He told Elena the night before the flight, "This one's for us, baby. No pagers, no emergencies, just family and a little inspiration for the kids." He had no idea that a routine afternoon at one of the world's greatest museums would become the moment that would test everything he believed about fairness, authority, and justice. But to understand exactly why this nightmare unfolded the way it did, we have to meet the man who decided a black man in a pilot uniform must be an imposter. Let me know in the comments if you have ever seen a pattern like this in your town. Type "Sheen it" if you have, and tell us what happened. Special Agent Eric Thompson thought he had spotted an obvious imposter. He was wrong, catastrophically wrong, and the next few hours would cost him his career, strip him of his badge for good, force him to pay hundreds of thousands in personal damages, and expose a pattern of aggressive, racially charged enforcement that had been ignored for years. Before I continue, let me ask you this. Have you ever watched someone in authority assume the worst about a person just because of their skin color? Drop a yes in the comments if that hits close to home. I want to hear your stories. Eric Thompson was born October 4th, 1976, in a working-class suburb outside Buffalo, New York. 6 feet even, broad-shouldered, close-cropped sandy blonde hair that had started thinning early, pale blue eyes that rarely softened, and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow that made him look more tired than he usually admitted. He grew up in a household where his father, a retired corrections officer, drilled into him that rules are rules, and authority must be respected at all costs. His mother worked as a bank teller and kept the house spotless. She rarely challenged her husband's views on law and order. Eric wasn't a bad kid growing up. He made decent grades, played linebacker on the high school football team, and held a summer job mowing lawns. But he carried a chip on his shoulder. Classmates remember him getting into shouting matches with teachers over minor dress, code violations, and once refusing to apologize after shoving a smaller kid in the hallway because looked at me wrong. In 2000, he enlisted in the U.S. Border Patrol right out of high school, drawn to the promise of action and clear lines of right and wrong. After basic training at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia, Eric was assigned to the El Paso sector. Early reports described him as highly motivated and proactive, but by 2004 supervisors started noting concerns. In one incident, he pursued a group of migrants on foot for over 2 miles in 100 and 5-degree heat, later writing in his report that they were obviously guilty of evasion. Video from a body camera, rare at the time, showed him yelling profanities and using a leg sweep to take down a 53-year-old woman who had already stopped and raised her hands. No charges were filed. He received only a verbal counseling. In 2007, Eric transferred to ICE's Enforcement and Removal Operations Division in New York City. He quickly earned a reputation as the agent who got results. Between 2008 and 2012, he was involved in at least 7 use of force incidents. 6 of them involving Black or Latino individuals. In 2009, he drew his service weapon on a 24-year-old delivery driver who matched a vague description of a forgery suspect. The man was unarmed and carrying pizza boxes. Eric later claimed the man reached aggressively. Dashcam audio captured him saying, "Don't make me do this, boy." The case was closed as justified. The driver received no apology. By 2013, complaints started piling up. A Haitian asylum seeker alleged Eric had called him, or another one of you people trying to game the system, during processing. In 2015, a Dominican, born US, citizen filed a formal grievance after Eric detained him for 47 minutes at JFK Airport, repeatedly demanding to see real papers, despite valid citizenship documents. Internal Affairs investigated. Eric received a written reprimand and 2 days administrative leave, the lightest possible discipline. In 2016, he was part of a team that raided a Brooklyn apartment complex looking for undocumented workers. Witnesses said Eric kicked in a door without knocking, pointed his firearm at a terrified family eating dinner, and shouted, "Everyone on the ground, now?" The target wasn't home. The family was legal permanent residents. One child, age 8, suffered a panic attack and required medical attention. Again, no formal punishment beyond a note in his file. Colleagues described Eric as old school and no nonsense. He kept a small American flag pin on his tactical vest and frequently posted on private law enforcement forums about weak judges and catch and release policies. In 2018, he applied for and received a promotion to senior special agent, despite 3 open complaints still under review. His annual evaluation read, "Thompson demonstrates strong initiative in high-risk enforcement actions." June 23, 2019 started like any other Sunday for Eric. He was 42, divorced for 4 years, living alone in a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens. That morning, he received a tip from museum security, suspicious individual in pilot attire possibly using stolen credentials. The description was thin, Black male, approximately 35 to 45, wearing what looks like an airline uniform. No photo, no name, no specifics. Eric gathered 3 other agents, all in full tactical gear, balaclavas pulled low, rifles slung, and headed to the Met. He believed he was about to make a major collard, an imposter using a fake pilot uniform to blend in, perhaps scouting the museum or worse. They arrived at 4:17 p.m. The Great Hall was crowded with tourists. Sunlight streamed through the massive windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. The temperature inside was a comfortable 72 degrees, but the air felt thick with anticipation as Eric scanned the crowd. Then he saw him, Xavier Walker, standing calmly near the aviation exhibit entrance, chatting quietly with his wife Alina and pointing out a vintage propeller display to his kids. Xavier's uniform was immaculate, white shirt starched, tie perfectly knotted, gold wings gleaming under the lights. Eric's jaw tightened. To him, the sight didn't add up. A black man in a commercial pilot's uniform, inside one of the most famous museums in the world, on a Sunday afternoon. His training kicked in, or rather, his bias did. He keyed his radio, target acquired. Male, black, pilot attire, east side of Great Hall, moving to contact. What happened in the next 7 minutes would change lives forever. If you think patterns like this, where assumptions based on appearance lead to aggression, need to stop, type enough in the comments below. Share your thoughts. Special Agent Eric Thompson drew his weapon faster than anyone expected. What he didn't know was that the calm black man in the pilot uniform was about to expose years of unchecked aggression, and in the hours ahead, one badge would be gone forever, federal charges would be filed, and a $2.8 million settlement would remind everyone that assumptions can destroy careers. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever seen authority turn into intimidation the second skin color doesn't match the uniform? Type "shin it" in the comments if this pattern feels familiar. June 23, 2019, 4:17 p.m. The Metropolitan Museum of Art, 5th Avenue, New York City. Outside, a perfect early summer Sunday, 78 degrees, bright blue sky, light breeze carrying the scent of hot dogs from the vendors on the steps. Inside the Great Hall, the air was cool and still at 72 degrees, sunlight pouring through the high skylights and painting golden rectangles across the polished marble floor. Tourists moved slowly, voices echoing softly under the massive dome. Security cameras, 32 of them in that single hall alone, recorded everything in high definition. Xavier Walker stood near the entrance to the aviation exhibit, his white pilot shirt crisp, 4 gold stripes on each epaulet catching the light, dark trousers perfectly pressed, polished wings shining above his left breast pocket. Elena held his hand. Tyler and Mia pointed excitedly at a vintage DC-3 model suspended from the ceiling. Xavier was smiling that warm, steady smile, explaining to his son how the cockpit instruments worked. He had no weapon, no badge visible, just a man on vacation doing what he loved. Eric Thompson and his 3 agents moved in fast. All 4 wore full ICE tactical gear. Black vests with large white IC letters, balaclavas covering everything but their eyes, rifles slung across their chests, sidearms already unholstered. Eric led, his pale blue eyes locked on Xavier. At 4:18 p.m., exactly, he closed the distance to 12 feet, raised his Glock, and barked in a voice that cut through the museum noise.
I see!
Hands where I can see them. Don't move! Xavier turned slowly, hands already rising to shoulder height, palms open. His voice stayed calm, almost gentle. Officer, I'm a United States Customs and Border Protection officer. I'm off duty. My credentials are in my left breast pocket. May I reach for them? Eric's face twisted. Shut up! I said don't move! You think that fake uniform fools anybody? He stepped closer, gun now pointed center mass. The other agents fanned out, rifles up, blocking any escape. A mother 10 feet away gasped and pulled her child behind a pillar. Phones started coming out. Quietly at first, then more openly. 4:19 p.m. Xavier kept his hands high, eyes steady on Eric's. Sir, my name is Xavier Walker. Badge number 7429. I'm on authorized leave. My family is right here. There's no need for this. Eric laughed once, short and ugly. Yeah, and I'm the Easter Bunny. You match the description. Blackmail. Pilot get up. Suspicious. On the ground, now. He gestured sharply with the barrel. One agent grabbed Xavier's right arm, twisting it behind his back. Xavier winced but didn't resist. Alina stepped forward instinctively. Stop! He's telling the truth! Eric swung the gun toward her for half a second. Back up, ma'am, or you're next. His voice carried that edge, the one witnesses would later describe as pure contempt. 4:20 p.m. Xavier was forced face down on the cold marble, knee in his back. Cuffs clicked tight around his wrists, biting into the skin. His cheek pressed against the floor. He could smell the faint lemon polish and feel the grit of 1,000 footsteps. Tyler started crying. Mia clutched her mother's leg. Xavier spoke softly, muffled but clear. It's okay. Babies. Daddy's fine. Just a misunderstanding. Eric rifled through Xavier's pockets, tossing the customs credentials onto the floor without looking. These are fake. Nice try. He found Xavier's real pilot logbook, a personal hobby item, and sneered. Commercial pilot my ass. You stole this uniform off some plane, didn't you? A museum guard approached cautiously. Agent, we have cameras everywhere. Maybe check with your supervisor first. Eric rounded on him. Stay out of federal business. Then back to Xavier. You're under arrest for impersonating a federal officer and illegal presence. Anything you say can and will be used against you. 4:22 p.m., Xavier was hauled to his feet, uniform now scuffed at the knees, shirt untucked where they had yanked it. His shoulders stayed squared, voice still level. I request to speak to your supervisor. I request a supervisor now. Eric ignored him, marching him toward the side exit, while the other agents cleared a path through the growing crowd of shocked tourists. Phones were recording openly now, at least 9 different angles capturing every second. Xavier's thoughts raced but stayed calm inside. This is exactly what I train new officers never to do. Assume nothing, verify everything. But he said nothing out loud. He knew the system. He knew patience was his only weapon right now. Eric shoved him into the back of an unmarked black SUV waiting at the museum's staff entrance. Door slammed. Cuffs dug deeper. Elena and the kids were left standing in the Great Hall, Elena already on the phone to Xavier's supervisor in Atlanta. What happened inside that SUV and at the station over the next 4 hours would turn one man's vacation into a federal nightmare, and would eventually cost Eric Thompson everything. If you believe no one should be treated like a criminal just because they're black and wearing a uniform that doesn't look right, type justice in the comments right now. Let me know you're still with me. Special Agent Eric Thompson kept his knee pressed hard between Xavier Walker's shoulder blades the entire ride. He had no clue the man in cuffs was a 16-year veteran customs officer with a spotless record, and the next hours would prove every assumption wrong, leading straight to an internal federal audit, criminal charges for excessive force, and a $2.8 million settlement that would come out of taxpayer pockets and Eric's own future. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever been shoved into the back of a government vehicle while your kids watched, just because someone decided your skin tone didn't match your clothes? Drop wrong. In the comments if you've seen this kind of treatment before. The unmarked black SUV pulled away from the Metropolitan Museum staff entrance at 4:25 p.m. on June 23, 2019. Traffic on 5th Avenue was light for a Sunday, but Eric drove aggressively, siren off, lights flashing only at red lights. In the back seat, Xavier sat upright despite the tight handcuffs digging into his wrists. Standard double, lock Smith & Wesson cuffs, ratcheted one click too far. His white pilot shirt was now wrinkled and smudged with marble dust from the great hall floor. A small cut on his left cheek from the fall had started to sting, but his breathing stayed slow and even. Eric glanced in the rearview mirror every few seconds. "You got kids back there crying because of you, pal. Nice job." His voice dripped with sarcasm. "Bet you thought that fancy uniform would get you past security. How many times you pulled this scam, huh?" 10, 20? Xavier answered quietly, eyes fixed on the back of the seat. "Sir, I am not impersonating anyone. My name is Xavier Walker, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, badge 7429. I'm on approved annual leave. My supervisor in Atlanta can verify everything in under 5 minutes." Eric slammed the brakes at a yellow light, throwing Xavier forward. "Save the speech. You people always got a story. Always got a badge you left at home. I've heard it 100 times. One of the other agents in the passenger seat chuckled, but said nothing. 4:30, 8 p.m. They arrived at the ICE field office on Varick Street in Lower Manhattan. Concrete building, gray and windowless on the lower floors. Eric yanked Xavier out by the upper arm, marching him through the secure sally port. Inside the booking area, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Temperature was a chilly 68 degrees. The smell of stale coffee and disinfectant hung heavy. "Stand against the wall," Eric ordered. 2 more agents joined, both white, both in tactical vests. They removed Xavier's shoes, belt, and tie, then patted him down again. From his pockets, they pulled a worn leather wallet with New York driver's license, Atlanta address, photos of Elena, Tyler, and Mia smiling at Disney World last Christmas, 2 museum tickets, dated that day, a folded boarding pass for the family's return flight to Atlanta in 3 days, a small silver cross on a chain, and his real customs credentials in a clear plastic holder. Eric flipped through the badge wallet twice, snorted, and tossed it on the counter. "Looks real enough to fool a civilian. We'll run it. Probably printed last week." He charged Xavier on the spot, impersonating a federal officer, false identification, and resisting arrest, even though video would later show zero resistance. Xavier stood barefoot on the cold tile, hands still cuffed behind him. "I request to call my supervisor. I request my attorney. I am invoking my right to remain silent until counsel is present." Eric leaned in close enough that Xavier could smell the coffee on his breath. "Attorney, you're not getting jack until we finish processing. Sit." He shoved Xavier onto a metal bench in the holding cell. The cuffs stayed on, tight, cutting circulation. Minutes turned to hours. 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. Xavier's shoulders burned. His wrists swelled. He thought about Tyler's tears in the museum, about Mia clutching Elena's leg, about the promise he had made his wife the night before. "This trip is just for us. No drama, no work." He stayed silent, counting his breaths, refusing to give Eric the satisfaction of seeing pain. At 7:40, 2 p.m., a different agent, older, graying hair, no tactical gear, entered the small interview room where they finally moved Xavier. The man introduced himself as Supervisory Special Agent Marcus Hale, but his tone was softer. "Look, Walker, if that's your real name, we can clear this fast. Just tell us where you got the uniform and the fake badge. Cooperate, and maybe we cut you loose tonight." Xavier looked him straight in the eye, voice steady as ever. "I have already identified myself. I will not answer questions without my attorney present. Please contact the CBP duty desk in Atlanta. Extension 317. They will confirm everything. Hale sighed, glanced at the one-way mirror where Eric was surely watching, and left the room. The cuffs stayed on. The clock on the wall ticked past 8 p.m. Xavier's mouth was dry. No water offered. No bathroom break yet. He closed his eyes and pictured his kids safe with Alina, pictured the aviation exhibit they never got to finish, pictured the day this would all be over, because he knew the truth always surfaces when cameras are rolling and good people refuse to stay quiet. But Eric Thompson wasn't done pushing. He had one more interrogation planned before the night was through. And that was when everything would start to unravel for him. If you think every officer should verify before they draw a gun on an innocent father, type verify first in the comments. Tell me you're still here. Special Agent Eric Thompson thought he had the upper hand in that small interrogation room. He was about to learn the hard way that arrogance has a price, one that would soon include the permanent loss of his badge, felony charges for civil rights violations, and a court-ordered payment that would haunt him for years while the man he wronged received the recognition he had earned long ago. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever had to sit in silence for hours, wrists bleeding from cuffs, while someone with power refused to check the facts? Type HARS in the comments if you know exactly how that helplessness feels. 8:23 p.m., June 23rd, 2019. IC Field Office, Varick Street, Lower Manhattan. The interview room was 10 by 12 feet, pale gray walls, one metal table bolted to the floor, two chairs, a one-way mirror, and a single overhead light that buzzed faintly every few minutes. Temperature had dropped to 66 degrees. The air conditioning ran cold. Xavier Walker sat with his hands still cuffed behind his back. 4 hours and 23 minutes since the cuffs first clicked on in the Metropolitan Museum. His shoulders ached with a deep, burning fatigue. Circulation in his hands had long since gone numb. Pins and needles shot up his forearms every time he shifted. The small cut on his cheek had crusted over. He hadn't been offered water since arrival. Eric Thompson paced slowly on the other side of the table, sleeves rolled up, ICE vest unzipped. He had removed his balaclava hours ago, revealing sweat, damp blonde hair plastered to his forehead. He leaned forward, palms flat on the table, voice low and deliberate. Last chance, Walker, or whatever your real name is. Tell me how you got the uniform. Who sold you the badge? We both know you're not CBP. We ran your prints. Nothing came back yet, but it's only a matter of time. Cooperate now, and maybe you walk with a misdemeanor instead of federal time. Xavier met his gaze without blinking. I have invoked my right to counsel. I will not answer questions. Please contact the CBP Atlanta Duty Desk, extension 317. They will confirm my identity, my leave status, and my record. Eric straightened, laughed once, sharp, humorless. You think we're calling your fairy tale supervisor at 8:30 on a Sunday night? Nice try. You sit here until morning if that's what it takes. He turned to leave. At that exact moment, the door opened. Supervisory Special Agent Marcus Hale stepped in, holding a printout and a phone. His face was tight. Thompson. Outside. Now Eric shot Xavier a final glare and followed Hale into the hallway. Through the half-open door, Xavier could hear fragments. Atlanta just called back, verified, badge 742, 916 years, annual leave, approved June 20th, family vacation, museum tickets, match. Eric's voice rose. That's impossible. He matched the tip exactly. Black male, pilot uniform, suspicious behavior. Hale cut him off. The tip was anonymous and vague. We have 32 angles from museum cameras showing zero resistance, zero threat. You drew on a federal officer in front of his children. This is already going upstairs. Eric's tone shifted to defensive. He didn't identify himself clearly. He did, multiple times. On video, you ignored it. Silence stretched for 10 long seconds. Then Hale's voice quieter, stand down. I'm pulling you off this. OIG is en route. They want your body cam and sidearm logged immediately. Eric stormed back into the room alone. His face was flushed red. He unlocked Xavier's cuffs with rough jerks. The metal finally released, leaving deep purple grooves and broken skin on both wrists. Xavier rubbed his hands slowly, flexing fingers that barely responded at first. You're free to go, Eric muttered, not meeting Xavier's eyes. But don't think this is over. Xavier stood, 6 feet 2 inches of quiet dignity, uniform still bearing the marks of the floor. "It is over for me, Agent Thompson. But for you, I suspect it's just beginning." He walked out without another word. In the lobby, Alina waited with the children. Tyler's eyes red from crying, Mia clinging to her mother's leg. The family embraced in silence. A CBP liaison from the New York office had already arrived, badge visible, speaking quietly to Hale. Statements were taken. Museum security footage was requested formally. Witnesses, at least 11 tourists who had recorded portions of the incident, provided contact information voluntarily. By 10:15 p.m., Xavier and his family were in a hotel room courtesy of CBP, ordered rest, medical checks scheduled for the morning. Xavier sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his swollen wrists. He thought about every new officer he had trained. Never assume. Always verify. A badge doesn't protect you from being wrong. It obligates you to be right. He whispered to Alina, "I'm okay, we're okay." But inside he knew the real work was just starting, not for him, but for accountability. The next morning, June 24th, 2019, at 8 a.m. sharp, representatives from the Department of Homeland Security Office of Inspector General arrived at the Varick Street office. They carried warrants for Eric Thompson's personnel file, body cam footage, radio logs, and use of force reports dating back 10 years. Supervisory Agent Hale cooperated fully. 3 other agents from the museum incident were placed on immediate administrative leave pending review. What the auditors uncovered in those files would shock even the most jaded investigators. A clear pattern of racially biased enforcement, excessive force in at least 5 prior incidents, and repeated failures to de-escalate when the subject was Black or Latino. Eric Thompson's career was over. But the real reckoning was only hours away. If you believe no badge should shield someone who refuses to check facts before ruining a family's day, type "reckoning" in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going. The Department of Homeland Security Office of Inspector General didn't waste time. What they uncovered in Eric Thompson's file turned one bad afternoon at the Met into the kind of accountability most people only dream about. A badge revoked for life, criminal charges filed, a personal payout that would follow him forever, and a quiet promotion for the man he tried to break. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever wondered how many times someone in power gets away with it because no one checks the pattern? Type "pattern" in the comments if you want real change to start with real investigations. June 24th, 2019, 8 a.m., the OIG team, 4 senior investigators in dark suits, no tactical gear, arrived at the Varick Street field office with sealed warrants. They seized Eric Thompson's service weapon, body cameras, which had been recording from the moment he entered the museum, radio logs, personnel jacket, and every use of force report he had filed since 2007. Supervisory Agent Hale handed over the museum's 32 camera angles without hesitation. 11 civilian videos from tourists were already subpoenaed and on their way. By noon, the auditors had what they needed. Eric's history wasn't isolated incidents. It was a documented pattern. 5 sustained complaints of excessive force between 2009 and 2016, all involving Black or Latino subjects. In 2011, he had held a Latino U.S. citizen at gunpoint for 23 minutes at LaGuardia over a suspicious bag that turned out to contain gym clothes. In 2014, he tasered a Black college student during a routine immigration check at Penn Station. The student was compliant, hands up, backpack on the ground. Video showed Eric shouting racial slurs before deploying the device. Internal Affairs called it justified escalation. The student received a $5,000 settlement, and Eric got a 2-week suspension with pay. The museum incident was the breaking point. Frame-by-frame analysis showed Eric drew his weapon at 4:18 p.m. with no visible threat. Xavier's hands were raised, palms out, no sudden movements. No verbal threats, children present and clearly terrified. Body cam audio captured Eric's words. "You people always got a story." The phrase appeared in at least 3 prior reports. OIG classified the detention as racially motivated, the force as excessive, and the false charges as willful misconduct. At 2:37 p.m., Eric was called into a conference room. 3 OIG agents, Hale, and a DA's attorney waited. Eric sat, arms crossed, still in yesterday's wrinkled shirt. The lead investigator spoke first. "Agent Thompson, effective immediately, you are placed on indefinite administrative leave without pay. Your badge and credentials are revoked pending criminal referral. You are under investigation for violation of 18 U.S.C. Far 242 deprivation of rights under color of law and 18 U.S.C. Front 1001 false statements in official reports. Eric's face went pale. This is bullshit. He matched the description. The description was black male in pilot uniform. That's not probable cause. You ignored repeated verbal identification, ignored credentials on scene, ignored supervisor verification. You escalated to lethal force in a crowded public space with children present. The United States Attorney's Office, Southern District of New York, has already been briefed. By 4 p.m. Eric was escorted out, no handcuffs, but 2 security officers flanked him. His locker was cleared that evening. The other 3 agents from the museum received 30-day suspensions and mandatory, retraining in bias, free policing, and de-escalation. 1. The agent who twisted Xavier's arm faced a separate review for unnecessary physical contact. Xavier Walker spent that Monday at a Manhattan urgent care. Doctors documented bilateral wrist abrasions with bruising consistent with overly tight restraints, mild dehydration, soft tissue strain in both shoulders, and acute stress reaction. Photos were taken for the record. CBP flew a liaison from Atlanta to coordinate. By evening, Xavier gave a formal statement to OIG investigators. Calm, factual, no anger in his voice. He repeated only what was on camera. I identified myself multiple times. I requested a supervisor. I did not resist. The civil claim was filed quietly on June 27th. A Section 1983 suit against Thompson personally and the Department of Homeland Security for false arrest, excessive force, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violation of Fourth Amendment rights. Discovery moved fast. Museum footage, body, cam video, witness affidavits, and Eric's personnel file painted an undeniable picture. In October 2019, the government settled for $2.8 million. $1.2 million to Xavier for pain and suffering, lost wages during the ordeal and medical costs, the rest for punitive damages and attorney fees. Eric Thompson was ordered to pay $350,000 personally, a judgment that would garnish his future earnings for decades. But the story didn't end with money. On November 15, 2019, Xavier Walker received official notification from CBP headquarters. Promotion to Supervisory Customs and Border Protection Officer, effective immediately, with a special commendation for exemplary restraint and professionalism under extreme duress. He transferred to a leadership training role in Atlanta, mentoring new officers on exactly what not to do, using his own experience as the case study. Eric Thompson faced arraignment in federal court on December 10, 2019. He pleaded not guilty to the 142 charge. The trial was set for spring 2020. Witnesses, including museum tourists, the guard who tried to intervene, and Supervisory Agent Hale, were already lined up. Conviction carried up to 10 years. Most insiders believed he would take a plea. The system didn't protect him this time, and for Xavier, the nightmare became proof that dignity and truth can outlast even the worst abuse of power. If you think stories like this should lead to real firings and real consequences every single time, type consequences in the comments. We're almost at the end. Xavier Walker stepped up to the podium one last time, looking straight into the cameras with the same calm dignity he had shown from the moment Eric Thompson drew his weapon. In the months that followed, one ICE agent lost his badge forever, faced federal prison time, paid hundreds of thousands out of his own pocket, while the real hero, a black father and decorated federal officer, received the promotion he had earned through 16 years of quiet, unflinching service. Before I continue with the final chapter, let me ask you, have you ever seen someone rise above injustice and come out stronger on the other side? Drop a rise in the comments if stories of real resilience hit you the way this one does. December 18th, 2019, Federal Building, Foley Square, New York City. A small but packed press conference room on the 10th floor. Bright lights, clicking shutters, microphones clustered like metal flowers. Xavier Walker stood at the center podium in a fresh navy suit. No pilot uniform this time, just a man who had chosen calm over chaos every step of the way. Elena stood beside him, hand lightly on his arm. Tyler and Mia sat in the front row, proud and quiet. The CBP regional director spoke first, voice steady. Today we recognize Supervisory Customs and Border Protection Officer Xavier Walker for 16 years of exemplary service. and for demonstrating extraordinary restraint and professionalism in the face of unwarranted aggression. His promotion to supervisory officer is effective retroactive to November 15th, 2019. We are also awarding him the Director's Commendation for Integrity Under Duress, the highest honor we can bestow for conduct that reflects the very best of this agency. Xavier stepped forward. His voice was measured, warm, carrying to every corner of the room. Thank you. I stand here today not as a victim, but as proof that the truth eventually finds its way to the surface when good people refuse to stay silent. On June 23rd, my family and I went to the Metropolitan Museum to enjoy a day together. What happened instead was a painful reminder of how quickly assumptions based on appearance can turn into handcuffs, drawn weapons, and hours of humiliation in front of my children. I identified myself clearly, multiple times. I requested a supervisor. I did not resist. Yet, those facts were ignored because, in someone's eyes, a black man in a pilot uniform could not possibly be who he said he was. This wasn't just about me. It was about every person who has been stopped, questioned, or worse, simply because their skin didn't match someone's idea of authority. It was about the children who watched their father forced to the ground for no reason. It was about the system that too often protects those who abuse power instead of those who serve with honor. I don't hate Eric Thompson. I pity the choices that led him here, but I do demand accountability for him, for the 3 agents who stood by, for every officer who thinks a badge gives them permission to skip verification. To every young black or brown kid watching this, your dreams are valid. Your uniform, whatever it is earned. Don't let anyone's prejudice steal your dignity. Keep showing up, keep speaking truth, keep being excellent. The sky is still yours. And to every officer listening, training matters. Bias training matters. Checking facts before drawing a weapon matters, because the next person you stop could be your colleague, could be someone's father, could be me. He paused, looked directly at the cameras. I forgive, but I will never forget, and I will keep working inside this system to make sure no one else has to endure what my family did. Questions came fast. One reporter asked about the settlement. The money helps with medical bills, therapy for the kids, lost time. But no amount fixes the memory of my son crying while his father is on the ground. What matters more is that the government admitted fault, that Eric Thompson will pay personally, that 3 agents are suspended and retraining. That's the beginning of change. Another asked about national patterns. Xavier nodded. Let's look at the numbers. According to DOJ reports from 2015 to 2019, black individuals are 2.5 times more likely to experience force during federal encounters than white individuals, even when controlling for context. In traffic and pedestrian stops nationwide, black drivers are searched at rates 3 times higher than white drivers, yet contraband is found less often. In 2018 alone, over 1,700 civil rights complaints were filed against ICE agents. 32% involved allegations of racial bias. Qualified immunity shielded many. But not this time. We lose too many good officers to burnout and too many innocent people to bad decisions. We can fix both with better screening, mandatory de-escalation refreshers every year, body cams that can't be turned off, and real consequences when patterns emerge. The room fell quiet. Xavier ended with one final thought. If my story makes even one agent pause before assuming the worst, if it makes one child believe they can wear any uniform they want without fear, then it was worth it. He stepped back. Elena squeezed his hand. The family walked out together as flashes lit the hallway. Eric Thompson's criminal case concluded in March 2020 with a guilty plea to a lesser at 242 charge. He received 18 months in federal prison, 3 years supervised release, and the $350,000 personal judgment stood. He never wore a badge again. Xavier continued his new role in Atlanta, training hundreds of new officers each year. He still cooks airplane, shaped pancakes on Saturdays. He still mows the neighbor's lawn when they're sick. And every time he steps into a room, people feel a little safer because he proved that real strength isn't in a drawn gun. It's in refusing to break. If this story moved you, if you believe accountability must be the rule and not the exception, type accountability in the comments right now. Share this if you think millions need to hear it. And if stories that demand justice and show real change matter to you, Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll keep holding power to account, one truth at a time. See you in the next one.